was at one such meeting. It was chaired by President Zuma, and really I think in an unscripted remark and in a throwaway remark, he said, I think, a very important thing. He said, quite literally, that he hoped to live long enough to see South Africa become a developed country, and that he was tired of South Africa forever being a developing country. And I think this actually captures the new dream. That's the including in a prosperous, functioning, good society of all 50 million people. And the fact of the matter is we won't get there unless we are able, in the next generation, 25 to 30 years, to do something like double or treble the size of the South African economy. So to take this economy from about 10,000 US dollars per head to about 30,000 US dollars per head, which incidentally is the average of the OECD group of countries. And it's quite interesting, Israel is about to join the OECD, and it's at 26,000 US dollars per head GDP. And I'm just using this as an approximate indicator that you have enough resources in the society to meet the legitimate needs of everybody. So I think the dream is a developed country. I think one condition for that dream is growing the wealth 2 to 3 times over the next 25 or 30 years. It's not the only thing we have to do, but I would say it's the necessary condition for everything else we want. I thought I would just focus on 3 things that appear to be quite important about how to double or treble the size of the wealth of South Africa by 2040. And the first heading is finding new customers. This has led us to focus on broadening markets geographically. So we're looking very seriously at SADC and at COMESA, 2 important regional economic organizations. If you put them together, and they actually have 8 overlapping members, you would have 500 million people and 800 billion US in GDP. Now, if it was then possible to turn that group of countries into a real common market, gee, you would be cooking with gas. Another part of broadening markets, of course, is to address the infrastructure of Africa. And it's very bad, and we know this. But again, what's interesting to remember is that the infrastructure of Western Europe in 1945 was pretty much non-existent. Non-existent. And it was rebuilt with very important help from the Marshall Aid. But this is good self-help, because the Canadians and Americans who put up the money wanted to sell goods and services into these markets. And that's the kind of deal we should be doing. It would be great if the World Bank would rehabilitate the rail network of Africa or part of Africa, so we could move goods efficiently up and down this continent. Rehabilitate the harbors. Create an Africa where in most countries there was an electricity grid that works, and I know about my Eskom association and the lights going up, but actually, by and large, the South African electricity system works pretty damn well. And actually, Eskom is the 9th largest electricity producer in the world. If we had this in the rest of Africa, I mean, by and large in Africa, if you set up a business, even a shop, you have a diesel generator to supply you with electricity. That's unbelievably economically inefficient. So here's a quantum of growth. A few words about the second area, skills. Yes, indeed, we understand that the education system is not good and needs to be fixed. And we need a system which I think is much closer to the Swiss system, where a majority of the cohort, maybe 6 or 7 out of 10, follow a vocational stream. They acquire skills. It doesn't mean they're second-class citizens, by the way. And it means they need mathematics, which is not a second-class study. They will also spend time in a workplace learning how to put their skills into practice and becoming useful economic citizens. That's a change that we need. I'm pleased to say that I think there's lots of progress in this area. It's unbelievably encouraging to have a communist as the head of higher education, because he can't look down on blue-collar work. And he doesn't. My last point about what's emerged is the importance of effective regulation. And let me broaden that and say, it's a lovely American phrase about wanting to live in a country of laws rather than a country of men. And I understand it's a gender insensitive quote, but there it is. What it's saying is, hey, let's live in a society where there are rules that are known, that are consistently applied, and we know what to do, and we know what is required of us. And I think this is a big test for South Africa. It's a huge test for Africa, and not only Africa, actually. And in a way, this deals a lot with corruption. I mean, in order to get a license, do you have to pay a bribe? In order to get a government contract, do you have to put an ANC political crony on your board? And by the way, if you're doing that, what does this say about your ethics? For the life of me, I can't understand why anybody would ask a government or a political party who should be on their board, or who should be the next CEO. I mean, this is a deep corruption of our national value system. And it will turn on whether we're able to build a modern society that's capable of competing. So, my vision, part of the dream, and I hope you'll understand that the sense in which I say this, is for South Africa to become the Japan of the African continent, and in becoming this, change the world's concept of Africa. I just think back to being a kid and Christmas and looking carefully at the country of origin of my toys, and if it said made in Japan, then I thought badly of my parents. This was a cheapskate gift, because Japan was a cut price source of toys and consumer goods generally. You go out and try to buy a top-end digital camera right now, and if it's not Japanese, it's very surprising. It's a country, and it's had its problems of its own, but it's completely changed its character and its place in the world mindset. And I think South Africa is perfectly capable of doing that. What's interesting is Afro-pessimism and the issue of risk. So, you know, I ask myself, is the risk of this South African dream that I laid out for you any greater than the risk of the first Swiss settlers who came to South Africa, the first Swiss missionaries who came to South Africa, the first Swiss businessmen who came to South Africa? Is it really greater? And indeed, is the risk of participating in the South African dream greater than taking a bet on Russia in the next 5 years? Or China in the next 50 years? Or India? Or Brazil? And I don't see any reason why it's necessarily greater. The risks are there, but you know, life doesn't come with a manufacturer's guarantee. If you don't want risk, don't get out of bed. There are risks in life. And I would like to suggest that the reward of a developed South Africa is a very substantial one.